right. If you're on Facebook, which 2 minutes before and there's already 15 people on the line, so we're doing well so far. It's Todd Von Deak here. I'm the Executive Director of the Association of Veterinary Technician Educators, and we couldn't be more thrilled to have you on the line. We're going to get started in about another 3 or 4 minutes, just a few minutes after the hour. You've done everything you need to see us, and we'll be right back with you pretty shortly. Half the fun with the dual screen is that I hear myself in stereo and I have to remember what to mute and what not to mute.
Yeah, I muted because I was doing the same thing. So I muted the Facebook one.
Yep, precisely, Jen. I was about to make sure you did that. And somebody found their way into the Zoom too. So perfect.
Hopefully my dog won't go bananas during this, or I'll have to mute myself as well.
I put mine away, but the pig is wandering, so she can be noisy sometimes.
Hopefully it makes an appearance.
Yeah, I think it should.
I don't know where she is.
I think the pig needs to make an appearance at all AVTE Facebook events. I think it's just how it ought to be. And folks, while we're waiting for the 35 of you already on the line, Kirkwood Community College in the house. Hello, Randy Ackman. Thanks for being here.
It's my alma mater.
Just so you know, this starts a series of what's going to be a weekly fireside chat discussion, whatnot, on the AVTE Facebook page. So we've got it in the events section, but hopefully you'll come back week over week, and we've got some great talks. Not meant to be huge long. This one will go for a little bit because there's so much to talk about, and we have an illustrious panel, but some of them will be 20 minutes of news and nuggets you can use and put into play immediately. So it's just meant to give you a place to come visit, say hi to all of us, and stay together as we stay apart a little bit. Purdue's here. Hello, Paige Allison. Oh, we're going to have a check-in board. This is going to get fun. Northeast Community College, Lakeland is here. Manor College, can I keep it going? St. Antonio College from sunny Southern California. It's sunny here too in New Jersey, Brandon. Anne in Norwalk is here. Tracy from Gullif. This is a party. Not bad. No pressure, Jen.
No, a lot of Canada.
Yeah.
I was going to say our Canadians showed up.
Yeah.
Oh, Canada. Go Cougars. UMass Amherst. Hi, Amy. Is this what y'all, I have to admit, this is my first online with y'all. Do y'all check in like this usually?
We've never done this before. This is the inaugural event.
Oh, heaven help us all.
I know.
Oh, Jim Hurl's on the line from down at Penn Foster. He promised he was going to comb his hair today, even though he's not on the video. I'm about to get a bad note from him on that one. I'm going to suggest, Jen, we just give it another minute or two because we popped up, you know, we're up over 60 now, and maybe we can help get everybody on the line, and we're only about 3 after, so maybe at 5 after. What do you think?
Sure, sounds good to me.
Cool. Thank you, everybody. This is, I have to tell you, from all the folks who have been thinking about putting this together, having you all here is just a smile to our faces. It's just very neat to have the community turn out in this kind of, oh, Jim didn't comb his hair, no. Buggers.
I didn't either, so I'll just tell everyone I'm way past due for a haircut.
Well, if we had run into tech trouble, I was going to throw up the video of me actually cutting my hair by myself with no mirror. That was a sight to be seen, according to my kids. Jenkintown from a guy over in South Jersey. Hello, Jenkintown.
And Crystal from Puerto Rico.
Puerto Rico. Nice.
Melissa says, is it just me or is the screen black for everyone else too?
We think it's just you, Melissa. I'm going to be honest. I've got a good screen. You've got a good screen, Jen?
I do. I can see everybody.
Yeah. We're up over 70. Pepperdine, hello, California.
Paige wants to know, Josh, but did you put a nice shirt on?
I did. What? She can't tell? This is.
Oh, she said yes, but you did put a nice shirt on.
I did, yeah. This is, gosh, I don't know, the first time in a long time I've worn anything but a sweatshirt. So.
Yeah, Melissa, I think it's just you because everyone else is saying they can see the video. So maybe log out and log back on again.
Yeah, do that, Melissa. And if you have trouble, email tvondeak at avte.net and we'll help you get in.
The Purdue group is showing up too. There's Courtney.
Indeed.
There's a West Virginia, Pennsylvania. Man, you guys are, everybody's all over. That's awesome.
Jen, out of respect for time and people's day, we're about 5 after. If you're
Yeah, let's do it. So welcome everybody to, like I said, our very first inaugural AVTE virtual webinar session. So it's going to be a really great topic today. We're going to talk about, because we've all made that crazy leap into distance education, kicking and screaming. So we have 4 awesome panelists. I'm going to have them introduce themselves. If you guys have questions, just type them in the question box. And Todd and I are going to kind of try to keep an eye on things, and we will ask questions as we can.
I'll introduce myself first. So I'm Tricia Gorham. I'm the program director at St. Petersburg College down here in Florida. And we have a completely online program and a completely on-campus program, and then we blend some students as well. So we started our program in 1994. The distance program we started in 1994. So we have a little bit of experience. So hopefully we can give you some tips and tricks to help manage our current situation.
I can go, I'll go next. I'm Josh Clark. I'm a veterinary technician. I work with the veterinary nursing program at Purdue University. We also are very similar to St. Pete's in that we offer an online associate degree in veterinary nursing, and we also have an on-campus program in veterinary nursing where students can earn either an associate degree or a bachelor's degree in veterinary nursing. Our program started not too terribly long after St. Pete's. Ours was more around 98 or 99, and I've been with the program now for almost since it started, for about 19 years. I teach online courses, I teach some on-campus courses, and I also do some program management and do some administrative things for the program.
I'm Markiva Contris. I'm a licensed veterinary technician and a faculty member at the Pierce College Vet Tech program in Lakewood, Washington. We are a solidly, firmly grounded program that was thrown into this virtual world with about 10 days notice. So I tell my students that we technicians are flexible, and they have really stepped up to the plate and demonstrated a ton of flexibility with changing all of our classes, especially our lab classes, to a virtual world.
I'll jump in. It's Allan Zahara here. I'm an educator. I provide professional services to medical schools, nursing schools, and right now I'm helping K-12 schools scramble madly to try and adapt to the COVID situation. So I've been doing this since 1997. It's a lot easier now to convince people of the virtues of e-learning than it used to be.
That's everyone, Jen.
Oh, awesome. Trish, who's starting out?
Josh is going to start us off.
So Josh, you want to go ahead and kick us off and give us your words of wisdom?
Yes, I'll go ahead and get started. I don't know how wise my words are, but I'll give it a shot here. I do have some notes here just so I can kind of remember what I was going to say. So mostly what I'm going to talk about is just some fairly general things about keeping students engaged and communicating with them online. I could say that probably one of the things that our on-campus students, I don't know if complained is the right word, but talked about once they had moved online was just that total loss of being in class surrounded with peers, having instructors in class reminding them about things that were coming up that were due, things they should be working on. And so I think that was a struggle for some of our on-campus students. You know, once students are online, and of course, most of the students that I deal with on a day-to-day basis are always online because I teach mostly in our online program. You know, just some things to help build community. And I would say one of the easiest things to do is having introductions at the beginning of a class or a semester. Again, some of folks that quickly moved from on campus to online instruction in the middle of the semester, you know, probably already knew everyone because you were in classes together. But generally speaking, I think it's a good idea I always encourage my students to post introductions. I encourage them to post pictures of themselves, of their pets, so we can see pictures of who we're in class with. And so the other thing that I do to kind of interact on a regular basis is I send regular announcements out, similar to what you might get if you're in an on-campus program. When it comes to, I'll send out you know, regular announcements, typically at least once a week to my classes, and just, you know, partly just to stay in touch, say, hey, how's it going? But also I always remind them of things that are coming up that are due. So if we have an exam that's coming up in the next week or two, I'll remind students of that in my announcements, or other homeworks and things like that. So, and sometimes they're just, you know, they're just announcements just to say, hey, how's it going? You know, is anyone struggling? If so, you know, get a hold of me, send me an email or call me, that type of thing. So I have found that I think with online students, sometimes we have to really encourage them to ask questions, you know, because when I'm standing in front of a class lecturing and I'm trying to explain something and I can see all the students in front of me, I can kind of see sometimes if there's a lot of confused looks out there. I can't see that when I'm online. And, you know, I know sometimes students, even in an online situation, are maybe hesitant to ask questions, don't want to look stupid, that kind of thing. So I try to encourage students to always contact me anytime they have a question about anything in the course, no matter how minor they think it is. In most of my courses, the other thing that I do that I think tries to kind of get students to interact with one another is I use the discussion boards fairly heavily, not in every course, but in some of the courses that I teach. And so I typically do that by posting some type of a prompt question related to the course material or something they had to read. And then I pretty much, in the courses I use a discussion board, I require them to participate in some of those discussions. And then in other courses, I just have a discussion board that's kind of open. It's a social board, and I encourage students to just use that to communicate. If they have questions that they want to ask each other in the class, I monitor it, but it's mostly for students just to kind of communicate informally about whatever. So I encourage them to do that as well. I think, and I guess maybe I should have said this at the beginning, but one of the reasons too I think this is important is, at least in our program, for our distance learning program, it takes students sometimes 4 or 5 years to complete. And so it can be hard to stay motivated and focused for that long a time. And so I think that encouraging the students to interact with each other and to interact with their instructors is something that that can go a long way in helping kind of get rid of some of that feeling of isolation, and help be a motivator for them to continue through that, you know, what could be 4 or 5 years of part-time online class taking. I think I about used up my time, so I guess I'll turn it over to, I think Tricia's next.
Yeah, just one comment. Sarah said telling shy students to use the chat option if they don't want to ask questions in person during Zoom classes.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And you know, with the teaching that I do that's strictly online, we don't typically use Zoom. That's something we started using when we moved our on-campus to online. But yeah, absolutely. And you know, I think any mode of communication that the instructor has available to them, absolutely students could use.
Okay, so I'll go next. First of all, I wanted to say, first of all, thank you for joining us. I wanted to say that, you know, we've been fully online since 1994, or we have had a fully online component since 1994. And I want you all to know that we also struggled with moving our campus students to the online format, even though we had all the pieces in place. So don't feel bad if you're struggling with what to do and how to help these students. That's kind of why this whole thing came about, is so we can kind of spitball things and say, okay, well, this is what we did, or that's what we did, or if you had questions and stuff, we could cover those kinds of things. So don't think that this moving to online for our campus students was easy for us either, because those students are not online students. They're campus students, and they picked campus for a reason. So another thing I wanted to say is that all of this work that you're putting into your classes right now is something that you should save and consider incorporating into your campus classes for the future. Because what I have found in all these years that I'm teaching online is every assignment that I create for my online students, I then make available to the campus students just to help enhance their learning. So things like videos and interactive assignments and things like that, that they can work on and then we can talk about in class. So interactive assignments is one way to help engage the students. I teach clinical pathology, so we know that's a difficult concept anyway, because clinics are moving away from some clin path in hospital. So think about teaching that completely online now. So I create, for example, interactive differentials. So I take pictures of my blood cells, I create enough 100 white blood cells that they can do a full differential. They have to report RBC morphology and do their platelet estimate and all that kind of thing. So interactive assignments that force the students to work on a project, they submit the results to you, and then feedback. Feedback is what you have to provide these students online so that they can learn. If they submit a differential and it's completely wrong, that's okay. Because then I say, this is wrong, this, or not this is wrong, but maybe you should go back and look at this. Did you see NRBCs? Isn't there something you need to do with those? You said you reported spherocytes. Does that animal present with an autoimmune, or things like that, to make them think about the content and then rework their assignment and resubmit. I allow my students to resubmit and resubmit, because the more they interact with that, the more they're going to learn. So that is one big thing, and feedback. Help them search for the answers on their own so that they have to go back and find the answers and then resubmit things to you. Set very clear expectations. And it's more difficult in the online format, like Josh said, because when we're on campus, they're looking at us, they're seeing us, they're interacting. When they're online, they're reading. And the more places you can put those expectations and those directions, the better. I typically have directions or assignments in 3 different places. I put them on our announcement board. I create an online organizer so that they know when things are due. And then they're within each module of the course, so that multiple different ways for them to find it, with very clear set rubrics on what I expect. They have to know what you expect. So the better you can write those directions, the more rubrics you can provide them, the more they're going to know. If you have examples that you can provide to them, For example, on our online students, we had not provided videos of how to place IV catheters before. They were using their textbooks and information we were giving them. Once we put a video, this is what we expect from our IV catheter. This is how we want it taped. This is how we want it prepped before we do it. Our videos of the IV catheter placement and all of our essential skills got so much better from just have the students can watch it and go, oh, now I understand what she expects. So clear expectations, and the more videos you can provide, even video feedback, most of the learning management systems have really good little tools in the video feedback section where you can just talk to your students so that they will connect with you. One more thing, and I have lots more, but I'll just do one more thing because I don't want to go over my time, is encourage, like Josh said, encourage the students to ask questions. If you think an online student is being lazy, they're not communicating with you, typically there's something going on, something that they're afraid to talk to you about or afraid for the class to know. So the more you can reach out to students individually, the more they're going to be engaged with you personally, and the better they're going to do in the class. So that's my 5 minutes.
Paige says online instruction takes a lot more time as you are often interaction and feedback or individual students. Online is not easy nor quick if it's done correctly. I wholeheartedly agree on that one. I think online is actually harder than teaching in person.
And it's a lot more instructor time. I can tell you I spend probably double the amount of time in my online class than I do. When I walk into the classroom, I know what I'm doing. I can see my students. I go in there and we have a class. But you have to think ahead so many, and you have to be engaged with your students almost 7 days a week online.
Laura wants to know, can you give tips for instructors who are teaching large classes? Discussion post / feedback gets difficult for those teaching 60 or plus students.
I would definitely agree that when you get into larger classes, it's harder to do use tools like the discussion board. I do teach a couple of classes that are fairly large, and I still do use it. I actually split the class up into separate discussion groups. Unfortunately, that still takes a lot of my time. It kind of reduces the time it takes for students because, of course, if I have a class of 50 and I split them into 2 groups of 25, then I don't expect people in group A to read all of group B's discussion posts. So it kind of cuts the number of posts down that they have to read and respond to. But it absolutely, using some of the discussion tools definitely take up a lot of instructor time.
Do we want to let Markiva and Allan talk, and then we'll field all the questions?
Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
Markiva, you're next.
All right. So with our on-campus program and our short notice of scrambling to create a virtual classroom, I teach in spring quarter, I teach a microbiology class and a hematology class, both of which have hands-on skills and hands-on labs. And so my big challenge was to create something that would engage the students and keep them interested, as well as trying to think ahead into the fall quarter, where I'm going to hopefully be able to see our students face to face, and how am I going to jam pack those essential skills into my already very full Clin Path lab come fall. So there's a lot of stuff that's running through my head, I tell you what, and I wholeheartedly agree as to how much time this is taking. Like Trish said, I could go in and teach my class and be done. this online stuff with the recording of the lectures, and then you have to edit, and then you have to put the captions on, and so on and so forth. I think I'm working harder than I ever have, and I've been doing this quite a long time. So my challenges were the labs, and found through the Facebook page with the AVTE, lots of folks giving us tips and places and sites to go to explore. I was able to find labster.com, which was giving their simulators for free during the COVID-19 pandemic. So that was awesome. It did help a lot in terms of my microbiology labs, and they even had a simulation on a CBC, so that was helpful, carried over into my hematology class. There's a, and I always get the initials wrong, but a virtual interactive bacteriology lab site that does microbiology simulations again, so that has been a really good resource for me. Our school was allowed us to purchase the microscope learning systems hematology course for our students. And while I'll say it's not ideal to look at blood cells online, it does give us an experience anyway of doing a differential and identifying those white blood cells and so on. As far as student engagement goes, our institution was telling us to do as many asynchronous activities as possible and to try to stay away from synchronous activities. But I felt it was really important for our students to be able to interact with each other and with their instructors. So I asked the students to commit to a Zoom session. I have 3 different Zoom sessions. They happen on Mondays. And I asked them to commit to that and treat it like it was a face-to-face class, and to plan to be there, and that I would miss them if they were not. And from my student feedback, they appreciate that, because we have been face-to-face for 2 quarters. They get to know each other, they get to know us. And so we don't spend a lot of time in those Zoom sessions, but it allows us to review what happened last week, talk about what's going on currently. We can talk about important dates of tests and quizzes and so on and so forth. But it allows them to do some interaction. And from the student feedback I've received on that, they say it helps to hold them more accountable to their assignments, because there is actually an instructor face that goes along with the assignments that they're doing. So I think in terms of what am I learning and how am I navigating this, I think that's been the most valuable thing that that I have done with my class. Now, we only have 25 students in that class, so it might be more challenging if you have 60 students that you are trying to accommodate. And the last thing I think I'll say is, with that microscope learning system, I had a student who was having some challenges with her white blood cell identification. She simply took some screenshots of the cells that she had questions about, and we did a one-on-one Zoom session, kind of a virtual office hours session, and we were able to really go through point by point. We could talk about the criteria, we could talk about what I would call that and why I would call that. It was more of a discussion that I would have face-to-face in front of their microscope if we were face-to-face. And that was really valuable for both of us, I think, that we actually could maintain some of this communication. And it's not ideal, but we were able to really navigate those cells that she was having challenges with.
Hey, Markiva, a couple people were asking questions in regards to the sites that you were referencing.
Oh, sure.
besides Labster, could you maybe like make a post on the Facebook group with the links to those different sites?
Absolutely.
Awesome. And there's a few more questions, but we'll go ahead. We'll have Allan go first, and then I'll start reading out of the text box.
Allan's muted.
I think he's muted, yeah.
Sorry. You can hear me now.
You're
Yes,
good
we
to
can
go.
hear you.
So my background is in distance learning. So I've helped medical schools, nursing schools, K-12 move towards e-learning, online learning. And I think that it sounds trite, but one thing that gets missed a lot is pedagogy or best practices in teaching and learning. Trying to make sure that that stays at the center when the technology can often bubble to the surface is a real challenge. So cart and horse, the horse needs to be in front of the cart, and the horse, I think, is best practices in teaching and learning. So trying to figure out what's engaging, authentic learning, and then how can I replicate that, whether it's a virtual environment or a face-to-face environment, needs to be the central question at all times. And I know that can be a struggle getting into the weeds a little bit sometimes, but that's the guiding principle for me in everything. Another thing to keep in mind is scale. What's the scale that you're trying to reach? Is it for example, one school was trying to get 10,000 Ontario nurses up to speed on hand hygiene very rapidly. So you can do some things at a scale of 1 to 100, but you can't do them when you're at 10,000 learners or even 1,000 learners. So keeping the idea that, well, you might have to move towards a self-paced model where you have formative assessment models, checks for understanding that are automated rather than discussion boards when you get up to a large scale. There's some tricks like that, trying to not replicate what you can do in small groups with large groups and vice versa is something to keep in mind. So discussion boards, you get above a certain number, I don't know, order of magnitude of 100 or more, it can be a real challenge. Maybe think about something like an automated little video with check for understanding quizzes instead, or limiting the amount of discussion boards that you have to monitor, because you really can kill yourself as an educator with that. I think formative assessment, meaning not evaluations, exams, finals, but the very small, very frequent checks for understanding or assessment to give you an idea of where your students are at very regularly is in some ways it helps you adapt to the environment where you can't see that somebody's tired sitting at the back of the class, or they haven't really participated for the last three classes. Those sort of things are important. And using your learning management system tools, if you have an LMS, which I think almost everybody does, dig down to see what are the tools that I can get analytics or metrics on, who's doing what, who hasn't done what, who's not checked in regularly. And if you have large numbers of students, there's even ways to automate that you can get automated reports on so-and-so hasn't really checked in for 2 weeks. Send them this, or use this tool to address those people who are falling through the cracks. What's the right blend between asynchronous and synchronous is a really good question. We talked about this earlier, but in a nutshell, asynchronous is really good for scale, and it allows flexibility of time. So if asynchronous meaning, you do it not at a specific time. So discussion boards can overcome that because you don't need to be in the same place at the same time. On the other hand, synchronous tools offer that interactivity, that effective domain stuff like facial expressions and seeing somebody's face, putting your name to a face, all that stuff that's deep human stuff that you can get out of video conferencing, or to some degree you can get out of video conferencing. But then again, scale. If you have time, it's more time intensive in many ways. So think about what are the strengths and weaknesses of various combinations of synchronous and asynchronous tools, the pros and cons, and then get that blend right. A term I'm seeing since the pandemic is blended agile. So jargon, but blended learning. So right now we're not doing any face-to-face stuff, or very limited face-to-face stuff. As we move forward, and we used to do the other end, all face-to-face and not online. But a lot of e-learning is adapting to blended environments. In the future, maybe we're going to have, some more face-to-face than we have now, or we're going to have to figure out what some blend is. And the idea of agile blended is being able to switch on the fly from a total pandemic shutdown mode to somewhere in between what we used to do face-to-face, and then like a slider button, be able to slide that back and forth when wave 2, wave 3, wave 4 comes, is something to think about. How can I be agile in the way I blend face-to-face with online learning? Last thing, get to know your LMS well, and what are all those little tools that you can use to automate stuff to make your life easier, to offer more feedback to students. It's a skill set like any other, but finding those nitty-gritty tools in your LMS that are going to help you deliver your best teaching and learning practices. So I think I'll just wrap up with that and hand it over to the moderator.
Awesome. All right, so some questions have come in. Have any institutions discussed reducing faculty load for the online instructors? How do you compensate a faculty person who is now spending twice as much time teaching online? Or maybe if you can't discuss that, what do you do to help and maybe guide faculty that's having a difficulty making that switch?
I can talk from our program a little bit. So our biggest concern currently is not our full-time faculty, because they're under contract. So we're having them jump in to help the adjuncts. We have to pull money from our budget to pay our adjuncts for summer, because technically they're having to come back this summer to assess skills for our campus students at this point, when essentially their course is over. So we did have to find money in our budget, and our college, and I believe many colleges in the country, are getting government funding for COVID. So we got a large sum of money, and some of the money is coming from that. Some of it's coming from within our budget. So that's how we're handling the adjuncts. The full-time faculty are full-time faculty, so we expect a lot of them, and they're taking on additional roles at this point.
Awesome. So I think this question was for Markiva, when they were asking, Katrina wants to know, are these sessions separate or separate from your regular lectures or in place of?
They are separate from the lectures. I've been doing my lectures through Panopto recordings. We use Canvas for our institution. So I do the lectures, they're kind of asynchronous. The students can just listen to them whenever they want to, and I just basically lecture over my PowerPoint, and I think that has worked all right. And then the Zoom sessions that I have on Mondays are, I don't lecture at all. It's just interacting with the students, and we can do an informal review of the previous week, also let them know what the expectations are for the current week. And I do them, there's 25 students, but I have 3 different Zoom sessions, and I ask that they commit to one of those times and show up every time as if it was a class.
Awesome. Another question is, what are you guys doing in regards specifically to radiology? Any tips or tricks on that?
I saw that question come in, and I was brainstorming some ideas. So some ideas you could use for didactic interactive would be to provide them with radiographs and have them critique those and let the instructor know what differences they would take, either positioning changes or technique changes or things like that. based on the radiograph they were given. You know, did they collimate properly? Did they include all of the anatomy that was included? If it's too dark, how do I adjust my technique to compensate for that? So that was just one of the ideas I had. You know, one of the other questions that came in was hands-on skills, and those are videos for us. But I will say that not only our campus students are struggling with that, but our online students are struggling a little bit at this point because of the reduced in their clinical hours, and their clinical sites have shut down. Some of them completely, some of them are reducing their course load. So we do have rubrics that allow students to video all of their essential skills. So essentially we moved those into our campus class and gave those students the option of doing that. However, when you start doing that, first of all, CVTEA has to be involved if you're going to assess skills via video. You need to have clear rubrics. They'll be concerned that if you're using a client animal, that the clients are aware that you're using that for a student. They'll be concerned that IOCOOK protocols, so the student is not poking the animal 5 times if your IOCOOK protocols say you can only do a venipuncture twice on an animal. So there's lots involved in moving to an online essential skill assessment via video. So that's a huge topic. What we're doing for online students is we gave them incompletes to allow them more time to complete those essential skills. And the campus students, if they are working in a clinic still and want to video that, we are allowing that. But otherwise, we are waiting to move them back to campus in small cohorts of students to get skills accomplished. Of course, we have a kennel of animals, so it's a little bit easier for us because we house our own animals. But Josh, I don't know if you have other ideas.
No, I mean, I think St. Pete's does it very similar to how Purdue does as far as our online program, and skill assessment is almost all via video, that students videotape themselves doing a task, and then they submit it in our LMS, and then we, faculty or staff that work with the veterinary nursing program at Purdue, then evaluate those, like Tricia was saying, we have standardized criteria for all of the required essential skills. And so when we're, of course, you know, the students obviously have those too, when they're doing the task and creating the video, and they know that when we watch it, that's what we're going to use to evaluate. And so that works pretty well for us for our distance learning program, other than also, like Tricia said, we've had, of course, this semester students who, you know, because the majority of our students in our DL program work out in a practice somewhere. And so some of them have struggled this semester because they've either been, you know, furloughed or laid off or whatever, and the clinic, you know, has seen you know, a lower number of cases, so it's harder for them to get cases that they need to do whatever hands-on skills they need to do. Harder for them to have someone there to videotape because there's less staff, because, you know, they're not as busy, so there's not as many staff people there. So it's been a struggle, even for our students that always do online and typically do skills submission via video. But I think it could work, you know, it can work with on campus as well, as long as they have access to animals and a facility, some type of veterinary facility or something that they can, you know, do some of the skills in.
Just to add to what Josh said is, and Paige posted this in the chat as well, is Purdue's checkoff sheets and it's their logbooks, but they break it down step by step, is open for everyone. And I will have to say I've used those because they're beautifully written and they're there for everyone. So if you are providing students with the ability to video a skill, make sure they have very clear step-by-step expectations, because I will tell you it's scary for what some of them submit. So be prepared to give feedback, and sometimes harsh feedback, on how they're accomplishing skills in their practices. But the more you can show them, this is the way we want it, step-by-step, video, written, all those kinds of things, the better quality submissions you're going to get from the students.
Yep. And we always, all of our skills things for our distance learning program are all, we grade them, I'm trying to think of the right word, you know, mastery level, as far as, you know, if they don't do the task right, we don't just give them a bad grade and move on. They have to actually re-video and resubmit the task and do it correctly.
As do we. They don't pass unless that skill is done to our satisfaction and to our standards.
I think this might be a good question for Allan. Any tips for creating an online syllabus? Is there anything different we should be including?
We're working on getting Allan.
Okay, would then anyone else like to
Different.
comment on
There
that
we
one?
go, Allan's live.
Yeah, sorry, I don't know that it's that different, thinking about it. The mode, your assignments may differ, right? So like stripping out, if I was trying to move from a face-to-face to a totally online environment, I would do a little bit of a gap analysis on the syllabus, go down, this is sort of obvious, but figure out the stuff that you can't do online, or ways you're going to need to shift that. But I don't know that it's all that different. Maybe somebody else has an opinion on this.
If I can jump in there for a second, our distance learning folks at our institution have been phenomenal in terms of offering us templates, giving us really great examples as to how to construct a course and do the modules and so on and so forth. But what I found most valuable from them was to include in my syllabus questions of the student as to what are they going to do if they have a technology malfunction, and to kind of ask them to think about and strategize how they are going to actually complete this quarter, since it's all new to all of us. And I think the students found that very valuable too, because they had to kind of think about, do I have Wi-Fi access? Or if all of a sudden my internet goes down, where am I going to get access? Because it's not something any of our students have had to think about, the technology, since we have been a face-to-face. I would strongly encourage you to check out your distance learning folks at your own institution, because it's not necessary to reinvent the wheel. They have the information and the resources for you.
Those of you that are using Zoom breakout rooms, what has worked well and what hasn't?
I have not used the breakout rooms. I use Zoom, but not the rooms. So
I've used the breakout rooms a little bit. I haven't had very many issues with it. I have an assignment for my campus students that are getting ready to graduate. You know, they're pretty much over being at school. So during our comparative hematology, they create poster boards and they use arts and crafts, and we cut and paste, and including all of the information that's essential for a horse blood work and cow blood work and things like that. So I was really disappointed we couldn't do that this semester. So I did use the breakout rooms for that. So students went into the breakout rooms and then created their own project, and then we came back together and then they presented. So not huge have I used that very much, but it worked well enough.
Allan here, I'll jump in. So one of the things is scale around that. If you want discussion, if your goal is discussion and interactivity for that, 4 to 6 is probably ideal. If you get much more than 12, then you're sort of losing that and really losing the purpose of the breakout rooms.
Any special devices or equipment needed to launch all online or aid, especially lab or hands-on type classes or lectures?
I use my iPhone for everything. all of my microscope pictures, all of my videos, I use my phone. So it works well. So nothing exciting. Our anatomy teacher used his phone to stream in his Zoom his dissection. So nothing, I mean, the bells and whistles are great, but I don't think you have to have that kind of thing.
Yeah, at Purdue, I know some of our on-campus instructors, when they said, hey, you're going to move everything online for the rest of the semester, used, I don't know, at Purdue we call it Boilercast, but it's basically the program where you can, it picks up your audio and your PowerPoint slides and do lectures that way. So, having access to some type of software like that, there's probably lots of them out there. Again, not something that you have to have, but something that's nice if you want to do, video lectures like that. But yeah, I think for the most part, you don't really need lots and lots of fancy technology stuff to do a pretty decent job of teaching online.
Has there been communication with the AVMA regarding assessing essential skills competencies during the social distancing virtual time?
I included that in my report to them, the substantial change report that I did at the beginning, just to say, of course, our online is our online. There was no changes to them, but to say that we were giving the campus students options to assess their essential skills online. And I had no feedback from them, so, but it does need to be reported.
I think it seemed like I remember a week or so ago getting an email about the required off-campus experience hours. I think they were had said that was recommended, but not a must, that they have to do that 240 hours. So I think they've given programs a little bit of a break there as far as if they have students who maybe, and I know our on-campus program, we've had a handful of students in this situation where they had a practicum or an off-campus experience place all lined up for the summer, and then all of a sudden the practice or the facility said, sorry, you can't come this summer, either because of the pandemic or whatever. So yeah, I think they've made some accommodations that way, but as far as the actual skills and evaluating the skills, I don't think they've really changed much for that.
Couple questions on dealing with students that have difficulties with either poor or no internet connections.
That, it depends on the area you're in. I know here in Florida, we're in the Tampa Bay area, so we're in a pretty large area. All of the networks were giving free internet access during this time. So because all of the kids went online too, all the elementary schools, middle, high schools, they all went online. So they were giving free internet access. So it's something, if your area is not asking for that, maybe that's an ask. Our college also provided laptops and webcams to those students who did not have those. So that was definitely a help, because when we brought all these online students or on these campus students online, we then went to online proctored testing, which required a webcam, which several of them didn't have. So they were able to get that through the college. So that's how we dealt with that.
So one of the things, especially if your students are rural or remote, you need to give significant thought on barriers to participation around bandwidth in particular. Sometimes the colleges are in the metropolis, and the hinterland is not something they think a lot about, but it can be a very frustrating thing, both for educators and for learners in that regard.
I think yeah, the instructors need to have a plan in place, especially, thankfully this doesn't happen very often, but if a student is online and they're taking an exam, and in the middle of the exam they lose power or they lose internet, and having a plan in place, especially telling them what are they going to do if that happens. They need to, the student, in my experience, when that happens in the middle of exam, lots of panic on the student's part. So having a plan for, you know, what are you going to do if that happens, telling the student, and then as an instructor, having some way of dealing with that. And it would depend on each individual situation as far as how you would actually address that and try and fix it with the student, but having some type of plan in place is pretty important, and letting the student know that what they need to do if that happens.
With frequent formative assessments, what if they aren't doing them because they aren't worth marks?
You gotta make them worth something.
Mhm.
If you want them to do it, it's gotta be worth something.
Yep.
That's the only thing I can say about that.
And stuff like, I think when I was commenting on formative assessment, I'm sometimes thinking of tiny little formative assessments that might only take 15 seconds to do, 20 seconds to do after a video, or like even chunking a video in smaller chunks and having checks for understanding throughout is an important way to, and it doesn't take work. Sometimes you can set it so they can't progress until they give an answer to the check for understanding. Yeah, I'll leave it there.
You can also make it known that those little formative assessments will show up again in the future. I do that a lot with things I want them to look at, but I don't necessarily give them points for. And after 1 or 2 times of those things showing up in their quizzes, they realize, oh, she means business. I need to look at that because I'm definitely going to see that again.
How have you modified assessments for online? What measures have you taken to maintain exam integrity and avoid cheating?
We struggled with that with our on-campus students. You know, we have a nice whole system set up for our online students, but we struggled some with our on-campus students because, you know, like Trish said, we had students that didn't have necessarily a computer with a webcam and things like that. So we did not force them to use a proctoring system. What we did was we looked at our exams and we put other measures in place, such as timing the exam, you know, looking, actually our program director, our interim director right now, Dr. Pete Bill, is pretty knowledgeable about things like how much time does it take students to take multiple choice exams or answer true false questions. So he had some guidelines that he gave us as instructors as far as, if you've got a, you know, 50 multiple choice question test, this is about how much time. And I think it was about 40 seconds per question for multiple choice. So we messed around a lot with the exam time. So students didn't have a bunch of extra time to go and look up answers during the exam. We also, you know, did things like randomized questions on all of our exams, so they couldn't, you know, call their classmate and talk to their classmate and stuff like that, as far as if all the questions were different. I mean, not necessarily different, but random in a different order. We also, in most of the LMSs, you can make it so the exam questions appear one at a time, and so students can't, and make it so students can't backtrack. So if they have 50 questions and they're on question 10, and they don't know the answer, then they have to make that decision. Gee, do I try and look up the answer and use that time, or do I guess now because I know that if I answer this question, I can't go back to it. So those are at least some of the things we tried to do to keep students as honest as possible.
Same for us. All of our lectures use an online proctor system. We use HonorLock currently. We have used Examity and ProctorU in the past. We really like HonorLock. In our lab exams, we focus more on essential skills and the completion of essential skills. While we do have tests in those courses as well, the tests are case-based, so scenario-based, so it really assesses their full understanding of the content and not just a multiple choice recall question. It's more of an enhanced question so that we can really assess. And, you know, we know students cheat, but when we have multiple assessments in place, then we can really truly assess the students that way.
Not found many online resources for urinalysis. Any ideas or recommendations for teaching this lab online?
I created my own because I couldn't find any as well. So again, like I did with the hematology differentials, I did the same with taking pictures of urinalysis. The clinic I currently work in, we do so many urinalysis a day that I had lots of opportunities. So just multiple pictures on low power, again with multiple pictures on high power, and then having them report that urinalysis back to me. So there's lots of pictures out there if you Google them, but for a complete urinalysis, it's more difficult. And again, I use my iPhone for that.
Well, we're caught up on the questions.
Jen, one thing, somebody I think Nanette commented earlier about a plan to take online classes and students coming from campus and the time involved. So what I tell my online students and what I told my campus students when they moved to online is when we meet on campus, we meet 5 hours a week for ClinPath. I expect you to be interacting with this content 5 hours a week, so that they have that clear expectation. Oh, I'm only online. We're only going to have a chat once a week for an hour. That's all I have to do. No, they need to be aware up front that this course is requiring me to do at least 5 hours of work a week just on this class. So that's one thing when I talked about clear expectations, that's one thing I make sure all of my students know.
We also we have a formula that we tell this is more for our online students rather than the on-campus students, but we tell all of our online students that they should expect to spend a minimum of 3 hours studying per week per credit hour. So if they're in a 1-credit course, they should spend at least 3 hours a week working on material for that course. And we tell them that that's a minimum. It could be 4 or 5 depending on the course content and their comfort level with it.
And really look for free content. Right now, it seems like everyone's giving away their content for free, which is awesome. I think a lot of you saw the Recover was offering free for our students as well. And then we now on AVTE's website are asking for tools and things like that. So keep sharing on the AVTA website. I know Jen posted a link to her videos for her courses and she's completely on campus. So we can all use that kind of stuff. Even those of us that have been doing it for a long time, I looked at Jen's videos, I'm like, oh, I like that one. I'm gonna use that. So we're here to share.
Amy said Cytology Coffee House on Facebook is also a great resource for images.
That website is amazing. So if you are teaching ClinPath and you're not part of that group, you should really do that. I use that all the time for my class. Almost every day I'm pulling up a picture and showing them a picture that has been posted. And it kind of makes you feel really smart because you have doctors on there posting things and they're like, we don't know what this is. We think this is a blood parasite. And I was like, well, that's humidity, but that's okay. So, but there's some really great stuff posted on that Facebook page for anyone who's teaching ClinPath.
Erin says for your analysis, IDEX Learning Center does have some interactive online modules that you can assign to students. They can create an account and do them. eClinPath also has great pictures for urinalysis and hematology.
The IDEX sites are great. My ClinPath are assigned those. There's hematology ones or urinalysis ones. There's a fecal one, and then there's radiology ones as well. So you should scan through those. They're free. They're free for students. If you have trouble your students signing up, sometimes they gave us a business account that the students have to put in. So those are assigned in our program for students. So there's some great ones out there.
Ashley wants to know suggestions or resources for freshman anesthesia course with accurate information.
Silence.
Yeah. Sorry, anesthesia isn't
not my realm either.
Yeah.
Katrina says Recover is no longer offering the free student workshop.
So I'm just repeating what my wife who's here in the truck is telling me. One of the resources is, Paula, go ahead and say what it is.
VASG.org, I think it is.
VASG?
V-A-S-G.
VASG.org.
We're just having, some people are just posting different resources in the chat box. What was the ClinPath resource just recommended? That was what, Cytology Coffee House?
Yes, Cytology Coffee House.
And also IDEX is good too. IDEX Learning Center.
And Colorado just got posted as well.
Also Cornell University eClinPath website. Veterinary Anesthesia Nerds on Facebook is a great resource. Vet Bloom Anesthesia is another good one. Think Anesthesia through Xerox for anesthesia content, free webinars.
Todd and Jessica, could we maybe pull all these links and send them out?
We will absolutely do that.
Awesome,
Yeah,
thank you so much.
They're just coming in like wildfire right now.
And this is what's so great about this group, is that everyone's willing to share.
Because we're all in the same boat. Any questions for the panel? Nothing's coming in. A lot of people make their own videos too, yeah. Here's one. For our fall semester, our college is considering having asynchronous video lecture and having 10 to 12 students for face-to-face lab. Usually our classes are 24 to 32. Any thoughts?
That's what we're hoping for too. And yeah, it's still going to be challenging because I'm in Washington State, so we have a pretty strict social distancing requirement, and I work at a state facility, so they're going to be monitoring us, and we are challenged with the whole, how do you stay 6 feet apart when you're trying to restrain a dog for a blood draw? So I think everybody's going to be in the same situation, and if you come up with great ideas, please let all of us know, because I'm not quite sure how we're going to be able to manage those face-to-face labs once we are allowed to do it. We found ourselves in a situation where we were trying to negotiate with our administration, like, well, what if just faculty and staff drew the blood? But then we're realizing then we're putting ourselves at risk. And is that what we want to do if we're trying to teach our skills? So I don't know the answer to it.
We're starting Monday. We're continuing didactic online, and we're starting live skills on campus on Monday. So I'll let y'all know. I'll post it on Facebook how it goes.
We just had a meeting yesterday on what the plan is and that kind of thing. And I will encourage you to have someone from your program involved in those conversations with college leadership, because they really do not understand our programs. So the person that was explaining what was going to happen in vet tech to me said, well, in radiology where there's 2 beds, and I thought, I didn't realize we had beds in radiology, but okay. And then the students have to stand 6 feet apart. And I said, wait. And then in addition to that, I might have frozen. In addition to that, they were talking about sanitation of the building and using an aerosol basic fogger throughout the building after the end of the day, to which I asked, is that safe for animals? And they said, well, we don't understand your concern. So if you can have somebody involved in those conversations, I feel it's really important. Somebody who really knows your program and can understand what's going on. they said, "Are you concerned the animals are going to lick it?" I'm like, "I'm concerned you're putting something aerosol in a building with my animals."
Any good video apps that people are finding works well?
Sure.
Also, any good resources for anatomy and physiology lab would also be helpful, if the panel has any.
I think on the Facebook page, there was a few posted the other day. Maybe Todd can pull those in as well, because that discussion was going on the Facebook page about anatomy just 2 days ago, I believe.
Is there anyone allowing site supervisors at preceptorships or externships to evaluate skills?
CVTEA says they have to be program faculty if it's an essential skill for primary instruction.
I want to go back just 1 second. I'm sorry about the anatomy stuff. The professor that teaches our online anatomy at Purdue has created an app that I know the students buy, and I think that it would be available to any student. It's an active lesson application that he developed in anatomy, and he uses it he might use it with the on-campus students. I don't know, to be honest, but I know he requires all of the online students to use it. And the feedback that I've seen from students, they like the app and think it's helpful for learning anatomy. And so they can do that, of course, without being in a lab dissecting animals.
Medina, you have a relative absolute virtual lab, not sure how to share it via the comments. If you're on our Facebook page, if you could post it on the Facebook page, that would be great in our Facebook group. Or if you send it in the comments, we can post it as well. Any other questions for the panel? We're gonna go through the comments and we're gonna pull all of the links and then put those in one thing, and then post that either to the page or to the Facebook group. So you guys you won't have to scroll through the feed when we post it. We'll get all the links together. What is the Purdue Anatomy app?
Oh, that's a good question. Give me 1 second here.
Paige posted that she was gonna send that.
Ah,
Yeah.
okay, good, yeah. I don't know a ton about it, other than like I said, the students like it. It's Kevin Hannon is the anatomy professor who developed it and uses it at Purdue.
Yeah, so Todd will also need to include the links to the videos too. Any helpful links for food animal courses? Any ideas on how to host online labs to cover some important information with food animals? I'm actually going to jump in because I teach production animal. There's some awesome Temple Grandin videos on YouTube that goes through its swine, turkey, and cattle production plants step by step, and it's really good. Anyone else on production animal have any tips?
I don't.
Only if it's about their blood.
I don't know if Paige found it or posted it, but I believe Kevin Hannon's anatomy application is on a website called Active Lesson, which you can find if you Google Kevin Hannon anatomy app as well.
You guys are amazing with all of your suggestions. Like, this is what I love about AVTE, is this amazing sharing of these incredible minds. And it's just so helpful, particularly during this crazy time.
We have some announcements too before we wrap up today, so don't leave without hearing our announcements. Right, Todd?
Amy says it may be helpful to have a place for us to share videos we create. For example, I'm happy to video a cabin and share. So one of the things you could do, Amy, you could actually make like your own YouTube channel, and you could post the videos on that and then share the link for us to be able to view it. I did that. We made a department YouTube channel. But we could also, maybe there's some way we could do it in the Facebook page as well. Any recommendations for parasitology online?
IDEX has one on fecal parasites. It's not only testing, but it's identification. I was just going to say, Jim, too, CAPC is a great resource for parasites as well.
Well, you guys have just been awesome.